Yes, the Bristol MA course does provide you mould making courses. Not so much. You have to ask for them. They don't have them as standard. But if you're interested in stop motion and if you're interested in the model making side of it, then they will definitely. Mary, who is the stop motion technician and I think lecturer now on the course, will happily go through that with you. But they also have a massive fabrication department with people that work in silverwork and pottery and 3D printing and electronics and stuff, and they're at your disposal, and you can sign up for workshops and that one, so you can have more extensive mold making training as well. So yeah, it's a great course from a kind of practitioner actually getting your hands dirty and learning how to do things point of view, as well as a storytelling course. Yes. So there was Sacha Lawrence, and she was integral throughout the whole film. She helped build the sets. She helped build all aspects of the puppets. She painted a lot of stuff. But it's kind of difficult because a lot of what we did very in tandem. So like the bomb, I designed the bomb and I sculpted the bomb, and then she took it away and she painted it and made it look more realistic by doing a kind of salt paint technique, which was very good. She also made more of the props on set. We also had a little bit of help from some junior animators on the BA to pebble dash the entire beach, because the beach was massive. The beach was about 2 meters by 3 meters, or 2 meters by a meter, so about a meter long and 2 meters back. And then we had these massive, like, weird cone shapes that Sacha made at home and then brought in, that we then had to paper mache, and then we covered in plaster, and then we covered in pebble dash and cement. And the same with the beach. And then the sea was made out of a big acrylic sheet with a piece of plastic underneath that we painted, which was actually painted by Fiona Fiani Pericchi, who was also on the MA, but she's a 2D animator, and she's one of my. I run a collective, and she's one of the collective members, and she helped paint the sky and the sea, the bottom layer of the sea, and then that had a vinyl layer on, a big plastic piece of vinyl, which was actually Sacha's dad's roof at one point, and then I think it's back with him now, hopefully. And then over the top of that we had cling film covered in Vaseline to create that kind of bubbling sea effect. And I think that was everyone. And then for editing and sound and the voices, my partner Ben Mitchell, he did all of the editing and all of the post-production and 99% of the rig removal, and he was the voices of Boris-Noris, and he did all the music as well. So not a massive team for general, but it was massive to me because I've always made all my films by myself, so it was really nice to have other people involved. But I animated the entire thing, I directed it, and I did all the storyboards. So yeah, and it took about a year. Yeah, about a year from start to finish. From story took ages. We did story for about 6 months. Then we broke up for the summer, and you can't gain access to the school over the summer. So then we moved into a studio. We were really fortunate. We were allowed to go to Ardman and work in their model making department because they had degassers and a room that would have airflow so that we could use chemicals and stuff safely. And so we went and moved there for a while to do all the mold making process and start the casting process and some of the other sculpting processes. And then we moved back in the September, and then we finished making puppets really close to the end of the close to the animation deadline, which kind of had already gone. And then we built sets for about... So we built sets and... We built the set in about a week, which we were very excited about and very happy that we'd managed to do that. And then we spent another 2 weeks finishing off the puppets. So then I probably started animating properly first week of October. And then I had until the end of November to finish it. So then I animated the entire thing in a month and a half, I think. So that was quite full on. So I animated around, depending on the complexity of the shot and how much of the puppet you would see at any one time, somewhere around 5 to 15 seconds a day, which was very full on, but it meant that I didn't have much time for concern or worry about like whether what I was doing was exactly perfect. So it was a very Anarchy type film, like just get it all under camera and hope it looks good and work through it that way. Yeah, so the pre-production was 90% of the film time, really. So probably about 7 to 8 months was pre-production, story and everything else, and then probably about a month and a half animating and 2 or 3 weeks editing, which I wouldn't suggest. I would say always try and leave a little bit more time for animation, because the scenes that I had to cut, long scenes where they were going to be like running after each other, which weren't necessarily important for the story arc, but would have been nice from an animation point of view. It was kind of my first experience as a director, I guess, in the sense that, I mean, I've made all my own films before, so I've made films by myself, but I think the true test of of a director is if they're able to tell a story and they're able to get a concept for a film out of their own head, and involve other people in that in order to make it a better production overall. So yeah, in that sense, it was my first role as a director working with others, and it was good. It was nice. It's difficult when you're in a position where you're not paying anyone. So there's a certain amount of... I was very lucky that I had very good people around me. Sasha was amazing. I obviously had a lot of narrative help. My partner is a professional editor and sound person, so that was great. So I was very, very fortunate in that sense, but there is a certain degree of you have to work with what you have, and that goes for everything in terms of like materials and stuff. And when you don't have all the money in the world to just throw at problems, you have to think creatively. But I like that. I think that's it's definitely what made this film what it was. So yeah, it was good. Directing is fun. It's very full on. It's not something I end up doing it a lot. It's not something I necessarily plan to do for the rest of my life. I would prefer to be an animator. I'm currently doing a PhD, so I'm much better at being the person doing the thing. So I think even if I went into directing, I'd always want to animate alongside that, because I like having my hands on my story in a very physical way. So yeah, it was fun. You're very welcome, Sasha. Sasha, the model maker, just logged in to say thank you for shouting out her name so many times. But she was a huge part of the production, so it would make sense. I can talk about my influences a little bit, and how I first got into animation. I was kind of always interested in animation, but didn't really realise it was a job that I could do, I guess. I knew it was things that people did do, and obviously there was lots of animation around growing up. And I was always really fascinated with stop motion. Like a lot of 90s kids, I was really, really obsessed with Nightmare for Christmas and James and the Giant Peach and Wallace and Gromit. And I kind of grew up really enjoying these films, and I was super obsessed with Tim Burton, actually. And then I did A-levels, and I ended up doing a bit of animation there. because it was available. I did a lot of printmaking and animation, and then I went on to my foundation degree and did animation and illustration because I'd originally thought that I wanted to do illustration. But then quickly realised I don't really enjoy drawing all that much, so probably shouldn't be an illustrator. And my animation work was a lot stronger, and I really enjoyed it. And animation for me always just seemed like a natural progression because I always did a lot of different arts. I did textiles, I did photography, and then I did fine art, and I always enjoyed sculpting. So it always seemed to make more sense to go into animation because animation is great because it's just the collection of all things, and you can do so many things within the animation spectrum. It's basically being able to continuously play for the rest of your life. So Julian's just asked about the festival side of things. So the film's doing quite well. So I finished in January, and now it is coming up to its first year out in the world, and it's done much better than any other film I've made. So it's on a circuit in Paris at the moment, in a children's film festival. It's been to Mexico, at the Stop MX festival there. It was at Stop Motion Barcelona, which was great. It was also in Stop Motion Montreal, which was a big coup for me because I've wanted to get into their festival for years. It was in Encounters, which is I'm based in Bristol, that was a great thing for me because the original concept for the film actually I came up with when I was in Encounters 3 years ago. So it was it had gone full circle, and that was in September, so that was nice. It's been in a few other festivals and children's festivals in Paris as well. It was in America. The first film festival it got into actually was in America, in Pennsylvania. So that was exciting because that was my first American festival ever. And then it's sort of trotting around Europe quite a lot. It's been up and down England a few times. We're waiting on a few more festivals to hear if it's gone to those. We plan to submit to festivals for the next year, and then hopefully release it online in 2019, in January 2019, or depending on how it's performing in festivals, the end of 2018. I do see other influences in my films. As someone already mentioned, this one is very heavily influenced by Screen Novelties and Max Winston, that kind of wacky, psychedelic energy that comes into, especially Max's films. They're really, really fun, really funny, and very high energy. And then some of my other La Mime is very, very heavily influenced by the centipede from James and the Giant Peach, with the shape of his head and his eye, the way I did the eyes on him. But every time I make a film, I try to make it different and in a different style, or improving upon a previous style. And I think it's one of those difficult things. I don't see a style within my own work, but I've been reliably informed that I definitely do have my own style, or that people can tell my work from other people's, but I would say like a lot of people, I'm a hodgepodge of a lot of different things that I like, and normally I sort of structure the design of something on the kind of look I'm going for, the kind of emotion I'm trying to go for in the film, and whether I think it would work with the story I'm trying to tell. So if I was able to make this exact film again, I would definitely make the puppet a little bit smaller and sort of consider the design a little bit more before I'd launched into puppet making, but it got to the point where I just had to start making things. I'd also... Sorry, this is answering a question from Julian asking what things would you do differently or not do in the next project, and what things did you find useful and would you like to repeat? A lot of it's to do with the animation style. I would really like to do it again in a more considered way, something a little bit shorter, something a little bit more structured, really lean into the 3D printing side of things. Because this puppet was sort of designed with 3D printing in mind and originally was going to be completely 3D printed, but then I kind of realised that what I wanted to do didn't really exist in 3D printing yet, or not in any way that I could access or afford, so I'd like to do more with that. And I'd really like to have, and I would have liked to in this film, played around more with the smear kind of principle, and it was something that I knew I wanted to try, but I was a bit worried about, and then I did it for this one scene because it really, really needed it, and it was definitely the bit that went down the best with. It's gone down the best with festivals. It went down the best with audiences. Went down the best with like crew members and colleagues and stuff, and it's always the bit that people point out as like their favourite bit, and I really wish I'd done more of it, but then it's one of those things, like if I'd done more of it, would people have not appreciated it as much or not enjoyed it as much as they did, because it was really impactful at that one point. It's a weird thing because it's such an animation language kind of thing that I think for some people that are not part of the animation world, they don't always understand what's going on there, and they think like his face is ripped off or like he's doing something weird, but if you know animation, you know that that's just a traditional way of showing speed. So yeah, I would probably do that again. The nicest thing about this film was actually making a film and then once being finished with it, not instantly wanting to never make a film again, and actually really desperately wanting to be in a position where I can make a film again, because I really, really enjoyed it, and this was a really fun way of working, and I would like to do it again, or I'd like to make another film again in a slightly different way. I'd also like to do something a little bit more like traditional, I guess, in terms of like more of a solid structural puppet with a good armature and very high-end making costs and look, but then I'm pretty sure everyone wants that a little bit. But it's always that weird thing, there's a quality to low tech, low cost making, which is really, really attractive and tangible, and some of my favourite films of all time are made in that way. And then there are other, when you see it, like high-end stuff, things like Aardman and Leica are doing a little bit, if you always kind of wishes you were working on something a bit like that. So are you working on a new project? Kind of. I'm working on several. We're thinking about adapting Boris-Noris into a TV series or a short online series, just because we really enjoy the characters, because it's performing well at festivals, we feel like there's scope in it. So we're thinking of converting it into 1 minute, possibly 2D, unless I can figure out a way of making it stop motion but quicker and more efficient. Mini episodes that sort of are based around the brothers and their quarrels over various things, objects, emotions, feelings, whatever. We've got a general outline for 6 episodes, including a Christmas special, so we're working on that kind of slowly, and I want to make a series in a kind of similar style, but more kind of cartoon, modern, blocky shaped characters, about the witch hunting craze, which is a completely other side project, but it's another comedy. I enjoy comedy, and I really want to try and do more of it, because so many of my previous films were so melancholy and depressing. It's much more fun to work on a comedy, and also I don't think that's where my strengths lie. I think I'm better at high-paced, quick styled animation that has a bit of a bounce to it. These are some of the really pretty stars that were made for the film by Sasha as well. They're the ends of toothpicks that are then glued together and then painted gold. But they're for a sequence where Boris sees his beloved bomb for the first time, and they're sort of sparkling around his head and around the bomb in a kind of 2D aesthetic of like, oh, isn't it amazing? Yeah, here. But otherwise, thank you very much for Julian at Stop Mo Lovers for organising all of this. If you have any more questions, please do just ask them in the comments, and I'll come through and answer them written. Oh, okay, so I'm going to take this as my last question. What recommendations can you give to those who are just starting out in stop motion? I think a piece of advice I kind of probably did get when I was younger but ignored, but I wish I'd taken on board, was just don't be scared. I put off doing stop motion for such a long time because I was really worried I wouldn't be very good at it, and I felt like I couldn't handle the idea of not being good enough at it, and I wish I'd started earlier. The people that you see, like the kids that you see that are like playing around with plasticine and making little Lego movies on YouTube when they're like 4, 5, 6 kind of thing, those are the ones that are going to probably end up doing really, really well, because it's doing this, but doing that with also a knowledge base, so either reading or watching some extras or talking to people in industry or people that work in animation, and really getting to grips with your timing and your squash and stretch, and getting that kind of principles down, and getting your ideas about twos, frame rates, 2s and 3s and stuff, which can come later, but that's really what being an animator is about. And if you're wanting to be a model maker, it sounds really stupid, but just get on with it and make some stuff, and don't wait necessarily for a project to come up. And I know it's really hard, and I don't take my own advice because I always feel like I need a project, otherwise it's a waste of time. But if you want to be a sculptor, sculpt lots, sculpt anything. I use plastilin. I use the hard type because I have very warm hands, so if I use the softer stuff, it just kind of melts. But really get sculpting a lot, get to grips with products. It's expensive, but try and get some work experience. That's always, obviously, it's easier said than done, but that's the best way of really getting your skills up. And just play, and try not to forget. I used to run workshops quite a lot with children, and they would always create these lovely things in like half an hour or something, and they weren't technically brilliant because they were 6, but they had a lot of energy and a lot of fun to them, and I would often think, I should really just do this, like I should really just not worry so much and just play with it. So that would be my advice, just play with the medium that you are excited about, and then as you go, if you decide that that's something you want to do, go into the education system, or get some work experience, or go and try and get your foot in the door at a company, and you can learn the rest as you go, but getting a good sense of timing and your animation principles, and then the real learning happens when you're actually working on something, and all of those principles sort of become less abstract, and they all fall into place, and you're like, of course anticipation is important, and of course squash and stretch makes sense, and you just sort of get used to it. So really embrace everything, and just don't be lazy, and just work hard and enjoy it. So yes, that's my answer to that. Like I said, if you have any other questions you want answering, leave them in the comments, and I will answer them in due course. In the meantime, follow Stop Motion Lovers. You can follow me at Twitter at LB Cowley. You can follow me on Instagram at the same, at LB Cowley. And you can also look at Boris-Noris's website and see how it's doing or where it's screening next at www.borisnorisfilm.weebly.com. Yes. And you can find my website at laurabethcowley.co.uk or Laura-Beth Cowley at blogspot.uk. Okay, hope everyone's had a really good time. I've really enjoyed talking to you all, and happy animating. Bye!